Hey, what's happening, guys? Got a brand new Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal, Life of a Bowhunter podcast for you. So I'm missing my co-host today, Dan Pickar. We have both been going so hard on these hunts, and we've been keeping in touch, trying to link up to make sure we get a podcast recorded. It didn't quite work out as Dan's in another state hunting elk right now. He finished up. He's just had an amazing season thus far. So arrowed just a great bull in the Wyoming backcountry. His buddy that he was hunting with also arrowed a great bull. And I know he went with Guy Eastman on his moose hunt for a bit, and now he's hunting elk in a different state. So wish him all the luck, but we weren't able to get him on the show today. We will return to our regular scheduled programming here in 2 weeks. Make sure that Dan and I get together and get one recorded. I knew time was going to get tight during September, so I thought I'd jump on, record this podcast, keep it rolling, keep you guys into some good content. So we sure appreciate the support of this podcast. Just want to thank our sponsor for today's show, Juniper Mountain Coffee. I'm so pumped as I think like this is the best coffee going, and we've got a great promo going right now. So if you go on to Juniper Mountain Coffee, you can save 25% on your order with the promo code Eastmans. Again, that's 25% off your order. It's bar none the best coffee that I've ever had, as it's such quality roasts. They have a couple different ones to choose from. I think 3 different roasts to choose from. I really like their dark, and I really like their medium roast, so you can check those out. The guys are just doing a great job as they source their own coffee. They're a small company, family owned, and they support hunting with their dollars. And so I'm really pumped with this. I've really been enjoying Juniper Mountain Coffee this year. It's just been great for while I'm hunting. I was able to order some tea bags off Amazon and fill them with their good roast coffee and make sure that I'm drinking their premium coffee all the time. So thanks to those guys for their support. Remember, you got that promo code Eastmans. You can save 25% on your order. And they have an elk on the bag, which doesn't get much better than that. So thanks to those guys for their support. We'll try to give them as much support from us guys as we can. So we're into the podcast, Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal. I had a quick question that I wanted to answer that came in. We're going to try to answer these questions on every episode as we get them. So I'm just going to get his name here, and then we can get right into the podcast. And his question is he's asking about, is it worth it to hunt elk in October? Man, I get such good hunting in October. I have killed a lot of my bulls in October, and I like it. Like Montana offers a longer season for elk. So a lot of these seasons they end up, or they end in September. Montana is one of these states where they let us hunt till mid-October. I believe this year it's August 15th or October 15th. So it gives us these days in October. And I just ran into like a buddy. His name's Hoke. He's a local guy, killed a great bull last year. He's hunting bulls this year. And we were just talking about October hunting. And man, I like it. It's like all the crowds go away. Everybody takes their vacation the second, third week of September. And these elk just continue to rut through this beginning part of October. Like I've killed a bunch of my bulls in October, and it seems like they get in bigger groups. And so you got these large number of cows, but you also have this large number of bulls. And so there's like a lot of competition for a cow when she comes into estrus. So I notice I get some of my best rutting action in October as well. And then all the crowds go away. And so I just have the mountains all to myself. So I would say it's definitely worth it to hunt elk in October. I use a lot of spot and stock tactics, but I think you can continue to call them. I think these bulls are hungry to try to find these cows. And so I think calling still an effective method. And it's, as like the elk rut, it ebbs and flows. And so at times cows are in estrus, bulls are going nuts. And then it seems to wane off. There aren't as many cows in estrus, and it can even be the third week of September and there's no bulls bugling for a couple days as they're not hyped up or they're not trying to breed a cow. And so it ebbs and flows. And so, you can miss hot hunting in October, but it seems like if you put in the days, you just find some great hunting, some great rutting action. And, really for hunting these bulls, I find that the best rutting action is the competition. Like there can be a bull just with some cows and he'll bugle a bit and can even be fired up if he's trying to breed a cow. But where I really see the best rutting action is where there's competition, where you get two herd bulls that are back and forth to each other. Maybe they both got cows, and then you have satellites in the mix. And the best rutting action I've been into this year has been multiple bulls that are sounding off to each other. And so, this creates this rut action in October when you get all these elk together and there's the competition for these cows that are coming into estrus. So definitely I'd give it a shot in October. And there's, elk hunting's just difficult. It seems like they're spread out this year. Like I know I was having my challenges, and I was into elk quite a bit and into shooter bulls quite a bit. It was just like getting these plays and trying to make it come together when there's so many elk and so many different eyes. And, I had one time where a satellite bull where I was closing in, satellite bull came by at like 30 yards, disappeared over the hill, and I thought he was gone, and he must have looped around. And so when I continued to move in on the herd, I bumped the satellite bull. He bumped into the cows. The cows kind of busted out, and I was able to get back on them as they just kind of fed their way through the meadows. But that started this movement where this herd bull and these cows started to kind of move country. And so really this satellite bull had messed up my encounter, and they're like a bit of a wild card. They're always on the edge of the herds. They'll come into different calls and things. Like a lot of these bulls that come into calls are the satellite bulls. But man, they're just challenging. Like they keep the herd bull bugling and they keep them occupied, but they're absolute wild cards. So you never quite know what you're going to get with these bulls. But I recorded a solo podcast that I put out on Eastmans Elevated and kind of talked about trials and tribulations this season and just how difficult bow hunting is and kind of some changes I'll make for next season. And then I just talked about like the motivation and the grind of the hunt. And man, I've got like a bunch of different acquaintances and buddies. And now my buddy Dylan Ness just arrowed a great bull, which super pumped for that guy. He's a great hunter, great elk hunter, knows elk so well. And last year he did not tag a bull, which is strange for Dylan. He usually kills a really good 6-point every year. And last year he came up short. And so he called it redemption year. And man, he just did a great job. He chased those things hard, made quality plays, and arrowed a good 6-point. In fact, we're going to get him back on Eastman's Elevated. Like I love recording with that guy. So yeah, so we'll definitely get him back on the podcast, and super pumped for that guy to kill his bull. But the point I was trying to make is how difficult elk hunting is. Like I've got 3 buddies from Hawaii who are really proficient, great elk hunters. They have 2 buddies with them. They also have another couple buddies in a different unit hunting elk. I've got 2 of my Australia buddies that are returning to my house tonight. Great elk hunters. They've killed elk. At least my buddy Craig has. This is Lonnie's first time hunting elk. Just great hunters. And then, I've got like my best hunting buddy, Dan Heverin, and I've got all these guys that are good, proficient elk hunters. And I start adding up the days that they have. And a lot of these guys have 20 days in their season so far. And until Dylan's or until I killed my bull, I hadn't seen anybody kill an elk. So it's like, it puts it in perspective, like over 100 days of hunting really good bow hunters, and there's still not a dead 6-point on the ground. So it just goes to show like how difficult these elk are. We kind of watch social media, and I follow like thousands of guys on social media, and thousands of guys I follow some really good hunters, and you see like a lot of good bulls come across my feed, and it almost feels like everybody's killing good bulls, and that's just not the case. It just follow enough of these guys and enough of these percentages, good units and good places, and also really good hunters that elk do die. But just remember that success rates for a bull elk in Montana are single digit. Like I've seen 5 or 6%, and that's not 5 or 6% on giant 6-points. That's like any bull. So 6% success rates is a bull every 20 years. So it just goes to show like how difficult these things are to harvest. And I think a lot of it are these quality plays that we get, like making the most out of these opportunities on these bulls and on these bucks, and really making intelligent plays. Like, I think that is the difference, is like getting really good at being able to read the winds, like this higher understanding of the winds, of the directionals and the thermals, and really learning about them. So, I've talked about it before, and if this is a repeat, I apologize, but it really is like understanding thermal winds is so important. So the thermals, as the sun comes up, it heats the valley floor. As it heats the valley floor, it heats the air around the valley floor. That hot air then begins to rise. It rises up the mountains through the coulees and canyons, and continues to rise up as it's hot and sunny and that valley air hits. If it gets shaded or overcast or starts to bring in a storm, that'll cool those mountains. Or like when the sun starts to fall, it starts to shade those mountain hillsides. As it starts to shade, that air begins to cool, and then that cool air starts to fall down the canyons and coulees. And like, really, thermal winds, like, a standard day for me is is the start of the day. The mountains are all shaded, the air's dropping. I notice that I get a downhill thermal, and it depends on the slope that I'm on. Sometimes I only get a downhill thermal for an hour. Sometimes that downhill thermal will last for a couple hours. As that downhill thermal starts to come down, that valley floor starts to heat. I notice that the air starts to switch around. I'll start to get an uphill thermal, and the wind is real fickle, like when it starts to switch. And so I've actually passed up a lot of stocks on bulls this year that are bugling really good around that 9 to 10 o'clock time frame, but those winds are so fickle, and I know, like, I get one chance at those bulls. And so really trying to play my best bet. And so, like, I've really held off on stalking these bulls during that change of those thermals, because I know once I spook that bull, that's my one chance at him. And a higher percentage for me is to play him in the evening. Also, like, why I've laid off on playing these bulls is, like, man, they're in thick cover. Like, they're in thick downfall timber as they're starting to bed in this mid-morning, and sneaking into that downfall timber, at least my style, trying to spot and stalk, and there's multiple cows, maybe satellite bulls. Like, I just know my odds are going down of trying to get in range of that bull. I really like them on their feet. And so if it's early morning and they're still moving or still feeding around, I feel pretty good about my chances. And it also just depends the terrain they're in. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to weigh my options, and I'm trying to play these high percentage plays, the highest percentage, which gives me the best chance at killing this elk. So I've laid off stalking on these bulls. When those winds start to switch around, they're also in the thick cover. And I just feel like I have a better chance when they're coming out to the openings, when they're on their feet, when I have like these thermal winds in the evening, like the last hours, the mountain starts to get shaded. It gets really consistent coming downhill. And so I'm trying to play these winds, as these mountain winds are so fickle. And I've talked to some of my buddies this year that have had a bunch of plays on bulls, and the winds have busted them. Like, the winds bust so many stocks. And it's one of those things that you have to learn and get really good at reading winds. So that really plays into my stock. And just trying to make these really quality plays sometimes means like giving up a play on the bull, and maybe somebody else comes in, maybe the bull gets up and he just walks away from you. Like, you never know what's going to happen, but I'm trying to play these high percentages. If they come out in the evening in a park and he's still bugling, like, I got a good chance to kill that bull. That's a high percentage for me. And so those are the odds that I'm trying to stack in my favor so I can kill these elk. For me, it's not about how many plays I can get. It's about these quality plays. And I think that, I think that factors in whether I'm hunting mule deer, whether I'm hunting elk, antelope, whatever it is. I'm trying to make these high percentage plays. And, we're all going to get chances throughout the season. It's what we do with them and being clutch in these opportunities. So I recorded that last podcast. Well, let me just finish the winds. So you get the thermal winds. Again, I kind of talked about those, really knowing those thermal winds and then recognizing the directional winds. And directional winds are going to be more on the ridge tops. And, I don't like lee wind sides. I like strong wind sides. So lee wind sides are the back sides of the mountain from when the wind's blowing. So, if I'm on a north face and I have a south wind, it's blowing over the top and acts like a washing machine over the top. Elk are really tough to kill in those situations. And I actually had like one of my best bulls on my wall. I kept diving into this drainage. I'd find these elk in these drainages, and I try to dive in morning plays and in evening plays, but it's on a lee wind side in a windy valley. So these things are on the north side in a north basin, and I'd always have a south southwest wind, and it blow and just swirls in that basin. And I've dropped in there 3, 4, 5 times. I've busted elk in there, and finally I'm like, no more. I'm not diving into this basin. Like, I'm going to wait for a steadier wind. I'm going to wait for a better play. And this big 6-point chased his cows out of that basin to the strong wind side about mid-morning. It was a great big 6-point. He chased him on the south side. I've got a south wind. And then I was able to jump in behind this herd, kind of trail them towards their bed, get a shot on this great big 6-point bull, dark horn timber bull, and kill one of my best bulls to date just because I didn't dive in there and played these winds. So like these directional winds can definitely come into play. And I recorded that podcast on Eastmans Elevated, and I talked about the grind and getting close to these elk. And I talked about my season moving forward, how I'm just going to put in as much time as I can, make quality plays, continue to get after these herd bulls. And that's exactly what I did. Is I went and put strong hours in at work. I was free. We had some rainstorms coming in. My dad was going to cover for me for a couple days. And so I was going bow hunting and went up there. And actually the winds that day were really strange. Kind of had rainstorms blowing in, and it was raining that day. And so the winds were really fickle moving up. But the only reason I killed this bull was my ability to read winds. Is I started moving up, but the thermal winds just weren't that strong in the darkness or at first light. And what happened is I made a big hunt. Me and Dan split up. Dan Heverin, my good buddy, he wanted to go up this canyon he likes, and I had got on some elk in there like previously that Sunday, and so I told him about this rough and rugged drainage he could go into. So he went in there, he got on some bulls, which is great. I went to kind of the back end of this drainage where I thought they'd be, or I thought I'd find some, and turned up some fresh tracks and some fresh sign and rubs and things, but I didn't turn up any bulls, nothing bugling, didn't glass anything up in these good parks. I did turn up like a 3-point muley feeding in a slide, wasn't quite big enough. Came down. I think it's actually my first hunt of the year where I haven't seen or heard elk, but they had definitely been in there. And so cruising down, I meet up with Dan. I get the story. It's now dark. I got out about an hour after dark or something. I'm hunting in thick grizzly country. And I came down through this kind of this like logged off country down and through there. And I'm in the dark with my headlamp and cruising down and trying to make my vehicle meet up with Dan. And I get down there, and man, I come across eyes right there and a black body. And so I pulled my pistol like I didn't know, and it happened to be a cow, but oh my gosh, it looked exactly like a grizzly bear to me coming down through the trail in those eyes. And then it didn't want to move too fast. It gave me a little startle, but it's not the first time I've ran into eyes in the dark, but man, it just it had me fooled. But I didn't shoot the cow, so that's a good thing. I made it out, and then met up with Dan, talked to him. He had located those elk. I'm like, well, man, you got those elk. You go in there tomorrow. Like, I had another backcountry spot I wanted to go into, but I said, let's cruise down and we'll find a place to camp. And again, we're just gypsies. We're just camping anywhere we end up. Put our camps in our trucks in the morning and end up in a different spot. Right now, I wasn't backpacking into these spots, although I did have plans to backpack a couple different areas that I was going to do overnights or 3-dayers in. But we head down to start camping. And again, I ran that routine of like, I know where these elk hang out. We're going to cruise down, find a place to camp, but I'm going to try to locate a bull in the dark. we stopped at a couple different points, and we stopped at like this spot, and then I could hear this just growl of a bugle, and I could hear this bull going off, and I was sure he was bugling with a different bull, but I could only hear the one. And it's a spot I'm familiar with, like I've chased him in there before, so it's great. I've got a bull located. Dan's got a bull located. We've got some elk to play on in the morning. Rainstorm's supposed to show up. So anyways, we get to morning. Of course, we're up at 4:30 in the morning, make a cup of coffee, head to our spots, sitting there at 5. It's not light until about 6:30 or 7. And kind of stop and listen, and nothing. And then I hear that bull go off, and he's just got like this growl of a bugle. And so I start playing him in the dark. It's like, I know chasing elk that I run out of time a lot in the morning, or they'll walk away from me. And so I don't want them to catch my wind. I don't want them to get too close, but I can start cutting the distance and kind of making a play at them in the dark. So when the lights come on, I'm in striking distance. And so I start trailing up this bull, and it's just a weird wind. So I've got this directional that's blowing the hilltop, but then as I get in the bottom, my thermals are actually rising up this bottom. So they're rising up, and I've got the directional that's blowing, let's say, right to left. And then, so I go up on the hillside. I've got that right to left. I get down in the bottom, and my scent's going up, and so I can't be in the bottom. And so, I end up playing the left side of this bowl. But then as I get, it's like this draw that comes up, and then it just gets to the steep part of the hill. And as I get to the steep part of the hill, then my thermals are coming down through that timber. So I've got thermals coming down. I've got my directionals coming right to left. And I've got this bull bugling. So I position way around him, get the wind right. I'm on the left side of him, and the lights are just coming on. He's already in the timber, but he's in this open timber with like grass in it. And, it's some stuff that I can really hunt through, and glass in front of me. And so as he's bugling, I start to close in, and I'm coming from below him slightly, and then from the left side of him. So I'm playing both the directionals and the thermals, which comes into play here. So as I creep in, all of a sudden I catch a cow up above me, one cow. She's up above me maybe 70, 80 yards or so. And so I kind of have this rise in front of me. And so I close in a little bit more and get next to this tree. And then I catch a couple more cows and a couple more. There ends up being 15 to 20 cows. They're everywhere from 40 to 80 yards. And it's so fun to hunt these things spot and stock. Like, I get it. Like, it's really fun to call in bulls and thrilling, but I love these like herd bulls. And when you sneak up on elk or keep this element of surprise, they have no idea you're there. And it's just elk being elk. Like, they're not up looking for danger. They're not on high alert. They're just all feeding their way through the timber. I'm able to creep up by this tree and then just let this whole situation develop around me. So I've got these cows from 40 to 80 yards. I can hear the bull over the hill. I think he's going to approach these cows that are 40 yards. Now there's limbs and sticks everywhere. It's like timber. And so I'm starting to approach through this, and all right, I'm sitting by this tree, letting this thing develop. And all of a sudden he comes up, and I see the bull, and he's got these great big fronts. I can see a 6 side on him. He's got a good 6 point. He's like a good mature bull, good mature herd bull, like something I'm looking for. And so he chases these cows up at 70, 80 yards, and there's just limbs and sticks everywhere. And need them to be a little bit closer. And I actually think that they're going to pass by and not offer me a shot. They're crossing up above me. And then the bull kind of circles these cows and tries to kind of chase them back into where the other cows are. And so he chases them back. I'm thinking, oh, something might happen here. And I'm just letting it develop. And this happens, I'm 10, 15 minutes in bow range. That's a long time to keep my wind right. But again, I played the directionals, played the thermals. I'm sitting perfectly. No elk knows I'm there. And all of a sudden, those cows at 40 yards, they start to kind of react. And I see a bull coming up, and it's a 5-point satellite. And he comes up to those cows at 40 yards, and he starts to chase them a bit. And Big Boy does not like that one bit. So he starts, coming down the mountain to come chase that satellite bull off. The satellite bull spooks, and he really like spooks him into me. Like I'm standing by the tree, and he spooks this bull to where he's going to walk over the rise, and he's like 7 yards away from me. So as he starts getting close and he disappears behind that rise, I duck down. And I duck down so I'm not standing, so when he stands up at 7 yards, he can see me. And so I duck down, which kind of hides me from seeing the big bull and the cows, but I've almost got to hide from this satellite bull. And the satellite bull walks over at 7 yards, looks right down at me, and I just stay frozen right there. And he doesn't see anything. Nothing tips him off. He goes back, looks back at the cows, and then this bull, the satellite bull, kind of comes right by me at about 10 yards and kind of crosses right in front of me. Now he's kind of getting downhill from me, but again, I still have that directional wind that's blowing from the bull to me. So the bull stops at maybe 10, 12 yards, but he's so occupied by the cows and the other bull that I'm able to stand back up. As I stand back up, I catch that big herd bull, and he's coming through, and I'm able to get a range on him at 48. He's kind of quartered towards me, not a real good angle. I do have a clear shot, but just not the shot I'm looking for. And the big bull starts going back towards his cows, and so walks through a couple different openings and then stops and gives me this broadside shot. And I didn't rearrange the bull as everything was happening pretty quick in the timber. Thought he took maybe 2, 3, 4 steps. He's got to be somewhere between 50 and 52, right in there. Put the pin right on where it needed to go. Pull, execute. Shot broke and just tucked right in the pocket. Totally heart shot that bull. And he rolls over the ridge, and then satellite bull doesn't even know what goes on. I think he spooks actually closer to me. He spooks to about 6 or 7 yards, and I kind of turn and get him on the GoPro. He's right there in front of me, and he stands there in broadside in bow range for a couple minutes. He just doesn't know what went on. Finally, he spooks. Turned my attention back to the herd bull. Don't see him. He had spooked over the hill, knew that I'd put a good shot on him, and kind of pull up my glass, and I can see him bedded right there. And he's getting pretty tippy in his bed. And then, he stands up. I'm going, oh no, he stood up. Where's he going? And I hear some crashing, and he had fallen over right there, dead. And so yeah, I gave him like 30, 40 minutes. I heard that crashing. I thought that was him tipping over, but just never sure with elk. Wanted to make sure that he was totally done. And so gave him a little time, sat there in the timber in the rain, and just thought about the whole experience and the encounter. It's just so wild when it comes together. And so yeah, then able to go and collect the bull. And just an awesome bull. He's a 6x6. He's got a small break, but he's got like a big 5-side frame and then another 6-side, and just huge eye guards, huge thirds. Like they're all, the 1s, 2s, and 3s are all pushing 20 inches. So just a great bull, great mature one. Kind of like it's weird to get those big fronts or try to take photos to show off those big fronts. But yeah, he's just a great bull. Dark horn, timber bull, growl of a bugle. Just couldn't be happier to be able to harvest a big mature one like that. So yeah, it's just wild when it comes together. It's like constant effort, and eventually just get my chance. And yeah, so I'm able to butcher the bull. Butcher him by myself. Like I've got a pretty good method. Those elk are so big every time. But what I do is I kind of I go about them one side. Now a lot of guys start from like the top or the back, and everybody has a different method of doing it. I kind of go down the inside of the legs, the inside of the back leg, the inside of the front leg, cut around them, and then I work it. I cut the bottom of the belly from cut to cut, and then I kind of work one side, and I'm able to kind of flap that hide over on that one side. I'm able to keep the meat super clean. So basically, I skin all one side. Then I've got the back quarter. I take that off. Like it's always good to carry like a lightweight tarp or a lightweight piece of visqueen or something. It just keeps that meat so clean. And so that back quarter, then I take that off, and what I do is I go down and I find the ball joint. I try not to get in front of the ball joint, as you definitely hit like that. You hit like an artery in there that'll spill blood all over your work. So I try to find that ball socket, get that, and then I work towards the back end, and you can kind of lay down that bone, and then it goes down into, like, I'm trying to explain it. Like you just follow the bone down, and then it kind of, like, you get around. Let's see, it's like the backbone there. It's got to be the hip muscle bone, and then it dives back in. And so I'm able to just follow those bones and kind of slice that, get to that ball socket, expose that. Then I get that forward. I hit that artery, a little blood, no big deal. Take that whole quarter off with my knife, set it on the Visqueen. Now I'm ready to bone it out. So the sirloin is the one that looks like a football, and you can kind of see it. So I can cut that off at, like, and I usually always bone my meat, especially elk. If I'm really close, I'll leave the meat on the bone, but you can do such a clean job. But I find that sirloin, I cut the bottom, like, right above the would it be the hock or that joint in and through there, and then I'm able to follow that to the big bone in the back leg, kind of saw that off, and then take the rounds off as well off that back, and kind of get all that meat off in the pieces. Like, I don't have to cut any of the top round or the bottom round or anything like that. I'm able to follow, like, all the cuts on it. And also, for a lot of these states leaving sex attached, I always struggled with this because it's like leaving hair on the meat and can dirty things up. And found a new method to do it that I really like. So you're able to skin down and then leave the penis with no hair attached, and then follow it on the other side of it, and you're able to cut it and leave that attached to the biggest portion of meat. That seems to be a real good way to do it, instead of trying to leave the balls attached or, like, hair to the meat. I used to leave, like, a strip of hair and then leave something attached, but this just seems to work really well, where there's no hair, sex is attached, they can see what it is, and so that works really well for me. So I run that on one of the quarters. Then I take the front leg off. Front leg, once it's all skinned off, you just pretty much lift it and then make that cut all the way along and take that entire quarter off. Once that quarter's off, I can follow the shoulder bone. There's, like, a point of the bone where I can take off the right side, the left side, kind of follow the shoulder blade out, and then can trim that all the way down to the shank and get those off. Once I have that, I take the one side back strap off, and then I go for the tenderloin. Tenderloin, I can just follow underneath there and can cut that out with the gut still in the animal, and can get that out with the gutless method. Take that off, trim up a little neck meat on that side, and then I'm good to go. Now, the trick of this whole deal is, by myself, is when I take off the head. I take off the head and those horns so they don't get in the way as I'm trying to flip it. This is a newer revelation over the past, like, maybe 5 seasons or something, where I used to try to leave that head attached and they were so tough to roll over. But once that head's off and I've got half that elk butchered, then I can just roll them over, and then I can work the other side off, do both quarters, backstrap, tenderloin, cut the neck meat, and then pretty much bag everything up, and I'm good to go. So that's kind of my method for, like, single butchering. Able to make some trips down, meet up with my buddy Dan. He helps me out. We get that bull out of country, and so yeah, it's just awesome. Have elk meat for another year. Super stoked. So it's always awesome when it comes together. So yeah, waiting on the call from Dan that he's got one down as he's chasing a bunch in there. But I really think these plays, man, it is just like making our absolute best plays on these. I think this is the difference, is like playing high percentage. And I think, we can only get so much experience chasing elk. Like, September only lasts so long, and I know I talked about October hunting. And so I think it is like if you want to get good at elk, you hunt elk as much as you can. Like, a lot of being a good elk hunter is being able to locate elk and keep yourself in them, which out west, there's, like, a lot of country where they're not. You have to find these spots that these elk like to frequent. And sometimes it's great looking elk country and there just aren't elk in it. And elk also use, like, a network of these feeding and bedding features. And so, like, it really is just exploring. And just like the night before, I went into a spot that I really thought was going to be good, and I didn't see any elk in there. And so it's like back to the drawing board. And once you can start to find or locate these elk, then it's like if you don't spook them or blow them up or get your wind wrong, you can hunt these elk for the next morning, for the next evening. And so that's what I'm doing. Like the big herd bull that I chased before this one, like I had chased for I had 3 different hunts, 4 different hunts. I'd locate them, not a good play or set up, or the wind wasn't right. And so, there is a time to go all in and try to kill them for sure. But there's also a time when it's like low percentage where it's like, no, I know where an elk is for evening. I'm not going to blow them up on this morning hunt, getting super aggressive and then lose my chance at them. But I think it's getting really good at these plays. So we talked about winds, and shadowing the herd is like really knowing your pace and knowing when to slow down. And so as I got into that timber, I could hear I was getting closer to that bull. I saw that first cow before she saw me, able to sneak up to that tree, able to see multiple cows there. And now I'm just able to stay frozen and let this whole situation develop. Because elk are these ungulates, they pick up this movement. So if they catch you moving, you're busted. But if you can hold still and know when to freeze and use the topography to be able to get close, like you have a good chance at killing these animals. So I think it's like a lot of like knowing when to slow down, and it's just like honing these instincts and knowing what you can get away with and what you can't, knowing that you have the wind right and it's time to go all in. And I don't get every situation or every stock right. Like I still make mistakes, but I think like honing these skills is a big part of killing these herd bulls consistently. And so, how do you get better at stalking? You get better at stalking, through picking up tidbits or hearing this information, but then also applying it on your own hunting. So it is this experience, like knowledge is one thing, but then when you can apply that knowledge to your own experiences, and once you have these experiences, it's like the greatest learning tool. So I think it is hunting elk as much as you can, whether that's, one state, and elk tags are expensive. And usually I do only hunt elk in one state. I've had a handful of seasons where I hunt them in 2 states. And I think I will go back to that next year and try to draw a couple states just because they're so dang fun to hunt. And Montana, they let me hunt them till October 15th so I can hunt them late. And I just enjoy it so much. Like it's such a thrilling way to hunt. I love chasing these bulls. I love hearing them bugle. Love seeing them rut. So why wouldn't I do it as much as I possibly can? So, it's one state or two, but it really one state. Montana keeps me occupied, especially these general season tags. There's a lot of years where I have 20 days and trying to kill a bull. So I get a ton of experience hunting these elk just through one state. So, it is about using your vacation time, using weekends, stacking another day in, and just chasing elk. And if you do fill out, like you can still continue to hunt elk with buddies and go on trips. And so it's like making the most of your September. If that's what you really love to do and want to kill big bulls, like the more elk experience you get, the better off you're going to be. And the other thing too is like now that I'm tagged out, I'm going to help buddies. I'm going to continue to get elk experiences. My elk hunting is done this year, but the best time to scout for elk is like during elk season. And so I'm going to use this time to really glass around and really find parties of elk during late September, during early October, during these months where, in future years, I may have a tag where I need to chase them. And I know that, whatever it is, October 1st, I saw a group of elk in this spot that they were using this area. And so like if you love to hunt elk and want to have next level success, it's next level effort. And so right now is a great time to gather information. If you are tagged out, you continue to look for elk. If you are tagged out, you continue to hunt with buddies and cover country and be in the elk woods, continue to try to help them out. And, if it's you that still has a tag, it's like you give it your all every free day you have. And we all have jobs and responsibilities, and we have families, and so we definitely can't ignore all that. But it is like it's definitely going to be out of balance in September. Like I always say, anybody that books a wedding in September isn't a friend of mine anyway. Like, who would get married in September during the elk rut, And so, but just on a serious note, like I know, our families are our biggest priority and we do have work, but it's like during September, this is the time to really chase and hunt elk and hone our skills. This season only comes once a year. And so you got these weeks of September, maybe early October, like I have here in Montana. Chase elk, get as much experience as you can. And then if it's elk that you truly love, like, you also want to get good at your hunting skill when you have other time. So mix and match these other hunts. And, I talk about it all the time. Like antelope is great training for elk. And it actually pairs really good with elk. Like elk hunting, it's so good morning and night, but you have all this middle of the day. And sometimes they bugle later and sometimes they move middle of the day and you can glass them up. But for the most part, it's like you have to go so hard for this first hour and this last hour. And, maybe that stretches a little bit. Maybe you got a couple hours in the morning, couple hours in the evening, but man, it's like for me to be into these elk and find these elk, I was the first one in the woods and the last one to leave. I was putting in so much headlamp work and heavy grizzly country. Like I have a bright headlamp that I trust, and but I just know I have to be in the right places at the right times. And a lot of these places I was hunting were 3 to 5 miles back, 3 to 6 miles back. And if I start at the truck at daybreak, mountain miles too with elevation, if I start at the truck at daybreak, by the time I get there, these elk are put away. And I saw it. One of my good spots, one of those big herd bulls I was chasing, 10:30 in the morning, I heard a bugle or cow calls and then a bugle. I'm like, oh, that's strange. It's like a typical calling setup where you hear these cow calls and then hear a bugle. And sure enough, I glass on the ridge and hear these hunters, and they had taken the trail in there. And man, that basin was alive that morning with bugles and a great big herd bull and satellites. And I'd seen another couple bulls in and through there. So this basin was full of about 4 or 5 bulls, but these guys, by the time they hiked in on the trail and left at daybreak, they got into this basin at 10:30. They made a calling setup. They didn't get an answer. They left. So they actually went to like one of the best elk hunting spots where there were a bunch of elk and there were a bunch of bulls, but they got there too late. So they didn't locate anything and they were out of there, where I sat in there all day and then got a play in the evening and about killed that bull, passed up a smaller bull. So it's like, you really have to focus on this morning and night. It's like hiking in the middle of the day doesn't do you anything. Like, sure, you can pick up sign. Maybe you get one of those bulls that's crazy fired up that continues to bugle. And I did hear bugles at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. I'd hear a bull sound off that I was sitting on or something like that. But for the most part, it's morning and night, morning and night. It's like to drill that. Like that's the reason why I'm able to keep myself into elk, is all this effort. And it's tough. Like we spend our whole lives being productive and active in the middle of the day during these daylight hours. And so it's really tough for me to hunt really hard in the morning. And then by 10 o'clock, I'm like laying down and I'm taking a nap in the middle of the day. And it's like, well, I'm taking a nap so that in the evening I can go locate bulls like the bull I killed. Where if I'm worn out or in camp having a cold drink and a steak or whatever, I'm not going to find that bull and I don't kill him the next morning. So just trying to get in this routine of elk and not feeling bad sitting around the middle of the day, and then really putting all my effort in these mornings and evenings. And then at night, like, man, oh man, I chase them until last light. And there were so many nights where I had hours of headlamp work in the dark to try to get out of there. I mean, there was multiple nights where I got out at 11 or get out at 12 and just catch a few hours of sleep and then back at it in the morning. But that is elk hunting to me, And so you really got to focus on these mornings and nights to be successful on elk. I think that's a big part of it. And then, as we're closing out, it's still September. It's September 26th as I record this. I don't know when this comes out, the 28th or the 29th. So it's still elk season, still have some October. But, if you love to hunt elk, it's like really working on these skills to be better. So, it's definitely, all the stuff we talk about and really look at your hunting this year and, if you were successful, great. You bucked the odds. You worked hard. It's an obvious testament to your hard work, to your effort, to your shooting, to working on all these skills. But remember too that elk season starts over next year. So none of these elk know that you were successful this past season. And so, you have to put in the work, and that'll be me too. I'll be right back to work hunting elk, because I'm talking about scouting for them during season. And I'll be, I was shooting right when I got home. I've already had a couple runs in, I'm already working hard, because I know that's what it takes to be consistently successful. So it's working on all these things, but I also think it's tapping into this skill set of like your instincts and stalking and decision making. I think that's the difference maker, is making these high percentage plays on these elk and being able to pick them out before they pick you out. And so really try to add some high opportunity hunts like these antelope hunts. So I talk about how it pairs good with elk season, as you hunt elk hard in the mornings and nights, middle of the day you can hunt antelope. It never really works out too good for me, because I'm always sitting on elk or thinking about the evening, or I get distracted by antelope and don't make it for my evening hunt. And so it pairs okay if you're hunting in a place that has antelope. I mean, really, antelope, most of the seasons open in August, so it's like a great warm up for elk season to go spot and stalk these antelope. And even if you're a caller, it's like working on these elk hunting skill sets. Like, to call in these elk, you have to be able to sneak in close to them. You have to build these instincts too. Is like you're moving from the cover and seeing these elk before they see you. You're moving in close for your calling setup. You're trying to realize where these elk are headed to and trying to get in front of them. Like, there's all these hunting skill sets that come into calling, that come into play too. So, it is working on your sounds and your noises in the off season for sure. But really, a lot of calling elk in is like knowing elk and calling them from the right locations at the right times. And so, that's something you can work on. And I think hunting antelope, I think whitetails are great training. Like, anything now that's an off season hunt, like, you guys know that I love to hunt muleys, and muleys are so switched on that I get I get great experience chasing these mule deer. And I actually think that the mule deer rut like mirrors the elk rut pretty close. Like, they don't make noises and bugle like an elk does, but they're visible, they're chasing does. And why I think it's similar is, like, elk hunting for me is, they're not these calculated plays where I see this elk bedded and I'm trying to sneak to that bedded elk. Like, most of the time I see elk or I hear an elk, and then I get over there and I have to adapt to the situation I'm given. So I have to rely upon my instincts to know when to freeze, when to stop, when to glass the timber, pick up those elk before they see me and go, okay, they're right there now. Okay, I can keep moving, or okay, I got to freeze and wait till they go over that hillside. Then after they go over that hillside, then I make my way to that hillside and then peek over the top, relocate them. Okay, they're right there now. They're in range. The cows are in range. I need to try to get a shot at this bull, or whatever the case is on these elk. So there's like, basically, I'm going to where they're at and then adapting to the situation I'm given. Now, mule deer during the rut mirrors this. Like, mule deer during the rut, these bucks are with these does, they're on their feet a lot of the days, they're moving, they're rutting these does. And so I do get plays on them as they bed. Sometimes I'll watch them until they bed, but a lot of times it plays on their feet. And so basically, I'm moving to where these mule deer are, and I'm adapting to the situation I'm given. I've got multiple eyes like I do elk season. Like, it reminds me of hunting elk, like hunting these mule deer during the rut. So it's like, take on some of these rut hunts if you can get a bow tag for those, or whitetail does. Like in Montana, they'll give you 5 tags as a non-resident. Like, you can go out and chase whitetail does tomorrow, and most of these ranchers and farmers will give you permission whitetail does, and there's also public land spots. Man, this is how I've like sharpened my skills to a point to where I can be successful on elk year after years. I work tirelessly on these skills, not to mention hunting axis deer. And I know that's not available to everybody, but there's opportunities to continue to bow hunt, to continue to sharpen your skills. So when it comes around to next elk season, you're better than you were this season. And, 6% success odds. It's like, man, you to beat those odds, you do have to be undeniable with your skill set. And so it's continuing to hone and work on these, like being a quality bow hunter, like it's playing the long game. And not that I get every move right or make every move right on elk, but I play these percentages and get high percentage plays, and then I trust myself and my movements, my ability to read winds, my ability to stalk, and then my ability to be clutch in these moments. And hunting other species will definitely sharpen those skills for you. So, like, I think that's the answer to find success. So, man, I'm super stoked. I got an elk down this year. I know Dan Pickar has one down as well. Great bull. So we'll get him on the podcast and hear the story, and just continue to get you guys these good recordings. So I know this week is a little bit different than the standard Eastman's Bow Hunting Journal podcast. But we'll return to our regular scheduled programming here in a couple weeks. We'll get Dan on and make sure that I connect with them and keep these podcasts rolling for you guys. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Again, remember to support our sponsor. It's our first sponsor here on the podcast. We're just really pumped to have them on. Juniper Mountain Coffee, just such good premium roasts. We're running a promo code right now, so 25% off with the promo code Eastmans. If you put that in, you'll definitely save some money. And then I also wanted to give a shout out for questions. You can pose these questions to my social media, and see, I'll find this. Find this one that was sent to me here, but yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out. The questions, like the reviews on iTunes, or not iTunes, we're not on music, are we? The iPodcast is like great. So this question came from Clayton, and answered at the start of the podcast. And Clayton said, I'm going to miss September elk. Is there a point in me trying to hunt them mid-October? So definitely so. My nickname for October and hunting bulls with my bow is Rocktober. I love it as there isn't as much pressure, and the elk get in these bigger groups. And let's see, like, you can just send me a DM with your questions or on social media, and we'll try to get more organized so we can answer those. And again, those reviews really help with the algorithm to keep this podcast rolling. And thanks again to Juniper Mountain. Don't forget that promo code Eastman. Save your guys 25%. Again, just like the best roast. And we just really appreciate the support of you guys. And that's why I didn't want to miss a week and wanted to make sure that I got you guys out a podcast for September. So today is all about elk. And man, with that, let's wrap this up, and I'll start getting towards my later season hunts. I do have some late season muley hunts that are coming up, so just super stoked for those. So I'm going to try to get my my work taken care of and free up some days, and try to get out and chase those things. In fact, I can't help myself. So I've got in a spot where these bucks tend to refuge before the rut. And it's kind of like bachelor herds, and I've always kind of hunted it like later October, but I do have time right now as I am tagged out on elk, and I want to help my buddy Dan hunt elk, but I know he can't go this weekend. So I may make a run over to this spot and backpack in there. It's a backpack spot, and just do a couple 2-3 days and see if I can find some of these bachelor herds of bucks. I killed one on video like couple years ago, I think, in there, and chased just some monsters around in there. So it's a great spot, and I have the time. I might as well be bow hunting, and I know my wife and daughter are gone this weekend, so I think I'll try to work some long hours and get out of here. Try to do like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and go chase those things around, and just see if I can locate a big dark horn muley. I came up short on my couple early season mule deer hunts. Again, if you want the recap, you can listen to my solo there on Eastman's Elevated. I did have like some awesome hunts, so I was like super pumped on the experiences. It was just like timing and the time in the field as I've been so busy here. But I did have a couple awesome hunts, and the season isn't over. It's, I haven't gone a year without harvesting a mule deer for a long time. Like, got a pretty good streak running. So I got to keep that alive and keep after these things. So gonna go try to do an October trip and see if I can't get them done and keep after these things. So, man, keep bow hunting, guys. Give it your all. It is so difficult out there, but effort is rewarded, and eventually you will get your chance. So keep after them. Thanks again for listening and supporting the podcast. We really appreciate you, and I'll check in with you with the co-host Dan Pickar next week. So thanks, guys.